Does everybody know what time it is? That's right. Athearn Trains is pleased to present another episode of Train Tuesday, and we are back and we are live, which means I'm hoping that you're at the workbench, you're at the layout, you're getting ready for another great year of model railroading. And you know what? October is going to be a full month for myself. I'm sure for you as well. And going right through the winter into the spring, we're going to have a lot to talk about here on Train Tuesday. Let's do what we always do in a live feed and welcome our guests. I see Derek has entered the chat. Darby Rail Services is here. DJ Model Works is here. Elka Steam, Jason, Sid, and many more. We got about 33 checking up on me online right now. So looking forward to talking to you tonight on Train Tuesday. We're going to be talking about the Athearn Genesis FP45 as well as the F45. Now, these are Genesis class locomotives, and if you're watching this live, you got a few more weeks before these are in stock. But if you're watching these later, they're probably in stock by the time you're watching this. Now, if you are watching this not live and you enjoy the content that you see here delivered to you every week, please do us a favor, like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video like this drops into your feed. Also, comment. I try to answer as many comments as possible, and it's fun to interact with you. So let's do one more round of shout outs. I've had people ask me, why do we do that? Well, it's our way of saying thank you for taking time out of your busy day and joining me at the layout. So I see Lots Creek Dave is here. Jason has joined us. Our old friend BN Green 1970 is here. Union Pacific 8518 Productions is in here, as well as TMA La France and Sid, of course, wanting to know if this is a real or dream. Let me pinch you, and no, it is real. So, as you can see, I've been busy this past summer. The studio is brand new. I've done some work on it. It's not completely finished yet, but then again, what layout is? This is the layout that I'll be using throughout the year and where we're going to discuss some of the newest Athearn products. We still have the N-scale layout, so N-scale guys, don't worry. That's just in another location, and we'll be using that in an upcoming video next time we've got some new N-scale to talk about. So with that, we're going to talk about these Athearn Genesis FP45s as well as the F45s. Save your questions for after the presentation, and I'll answer as many as I can. And maybe, just maybe, if we have time, we'll get to see tonight's guest operate in action. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Grab the beverage of your choice, get comfy in your workshop chair, and let's get started with another Train Tuesday. So let's go back in time. Let's go back to the early 1960s. Now, EMD kind of had a dilemma on their hands. The tried and true 567 prime mover was at its zenith, really. It was over 20 years old, and it had reached its peak at 2,500 horsepower. Now, that 2,500 horsepower came by way of a turbocharged 16-cylinder 567. Now, EMD then released a new 645 engine in 1966. Now, the most powerful locomotive using this series of engine to date was the SD45. Now, it was powered by a 20-cylinder turbocharged 645E engine, and it was producing 3,600 horsepower. Now, they offered the V20 645E engine in the SDP45. Now, this was a standard hood configuration. However, the P designation for passenger could be used for passenger trains. So ideally, railroads that were looking to get rid of their cowl units in the form of E units and F units could upgrade to the SDP45, and right away, they would have a new passenger locomotive. However, Santa Fe, always being a railroad that was very in touch with aesthetics, said, you know, it's a great locomotive, it runs great, but aesthetically, it's not as pleasing as the predecessors. Can you do something about it? So they approached EMD with this question, and EMD replied by making what you see on your screen now. It was a fully cowled locomotive. It had something that looked akin to the North American safety cab on the front, and then a cowl all the way to the back. Now, There wasn't any structural integrity to this. It was literally just a cover, if you will, over a regular locomotive. Now, after sponsoring the development of the FP45 passenger locomotive, the Santa Fe requested a similar freight locomotive from Electro-Motive, where the FP45 was essentially an SDP45 wrapped in this cowl car body. The new F45 was, can you guess it? If you had guessed SD45, you would be correct. And the SD45 was given the same treatment. So that's what we're going to be talking about, are these two interesting cowl units that came about in the 1960s and in many cases lasted right up into the 1990s. We're going to be starting to talk about the the FP45P. Now, I don't know about you, but when you think of the Transcon, you probably think about more modern locomotives, maybe Tier 4s, SD70 Aces, maybe if you're an older person like me, an AC 4400 or a Dash 9. But for some of us, these are what we were thinking of. Yeah, these were actually used in the Transcon for a brief amount of time. And Santa Fe did a great job with bringing back an iconic paint scheme. So let's go back to 1989, where Santa Fe basically brought back the war bonnet. However, this time they were calling it the Super Fleet. It was a modernized version with large lettering, and it became a standard for the North American safety cab Santa Fe locomotives right up until and right after the BNSF merger. So keeping the tradition of the great passenger train back in the day, Santa Fe repainted all remaining ex-passenger service FP45s into the scheme that you see here. They can be found on company specials as well as regular freight service. A few are still around on display at different museums. In fact, a museum in California restored a Santa Fe FP45 back to its original appearance. But that's a different paint scheme. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Now let's talk about the three super fleets that we're going to be offering in this run. And again, these are going to be available in a few weeks. We announced these a couple of years ago. So 1992 era, these all have nose-mounted headlights. They have the 3-chime Leslie horn. You'll notice too that they have a roof AC. They have the Santa Fe style antenna setup, and they still have their passenger service style plow, blanked out cab gyro lights. You can see on the cab that those gyro lights long been removed and patched over. Those weren't in use anymore. Now, specifically, engine number 90 here still has its cab-mounted horn, and it's still painted red to match its Super Fleet colors. Now, do you see guys asking questions in the sidebar? I'm not going to be able to answer those because I'm going to be working on this presentation. But after the presentation, if you got a question, I'll open up the floor for a few questions, and we can get those answered for you. Coming up next is 96. The details between these locomotives are identical. You can see that in the gold sidebar. But this locomotive is a little bit different than the previous version. Number 96 has a body-mounted horn, and it's silver. So look in between the fans there, you can see the horn, and it's painted silver, whereas the other one was on the cab and painted red. And then finally, number 97. Again, some of the same details that we talked about in the previous two units. But these are body-mounted. This has a body-mounted red horn. And notice on the left side only, there's going to be a cab sunshade, which is kind of cool. Why that is, I don't know. Now, keep in mind that Genesis is not only road name specific details, but it's also road number specific details. So these are the details that our product development staff found in their research, and we're offering these for you. Now let's go back to the 1970s. These are pretty much essentially the same locomotives, 1970s era. A little bit of background on these locomotives. After the formation of Amtrak in 1971, Santa Fe converted their FP45 fleet into freight service. Now what they did was they removed the steam generators and the application of their pinstripe blue and yellow scheme like you see here. These units retained their cab-mounted Mars lights until they were rebuilt in the 1980s. Now, I've always been a fan of the pinstripe, or some people call it the bookends paint scheme. Really classy paint scheme. Simple but effective. And we're going to be offering 3 different road numbers in this paint scheme. Again, this is early 1970s. The first locomotive you see on your screen, 5943, again, early 1970s. Now, all three of these road numbers are going to have some of the same details. They're all going to include nose-mounted headlights, cab-mounted gyro light with emergency red warning light. Now, keep in mind, we offer these both DCC ready as well as with the Tsunami 2 by Soundtracks. If you purchase the one with the Tsunami 2, that emergency light will work in DCC. If you get the DCC ready version, the LEDs are there, but it's up to you to program it. You're also going to have a 5-chime horn, passenger-style front plow, removed steam generator for a freight service, and a single can antenna. These are really cool if you want something a little bit different for your 1970s freight. Here's 5946, again, early 1970s. It shares all of the common details as its predecessor. And of course, we have 5947. So 3 different road numbers for you to choose from, so you can put together a great-looking freight set for, again, 1970s. Milwaukee Road. Now, we've got 3 different road numbers here, and this is, again, where Genesis shines. Genesis allows us to do not only road name-specific details, but road number-specific details. Keep in mind and keep an eye on these locomotives as I go through these slides. You'll see some differences. So Milwaukee Road's 5 FP45s were a mere 4 years old when Amtrak took over passenger operations in the United States. These 5, plus another order of 5 that was eventually canceled, were intended to replace Milwaukee's aging E9 fleet. Now, funny thing was, crews disliked how the FP45s rode so much that they were demoted to freight service soon after word of Amtrak's impending formation. One of the things Milwaukee Road did was they removed the steam generators and water tanks, and then they added concrete ballast, which aided in improving pulling power and ride quality. Kind of an interesting thing to do. They removed all that weight. What they do? They replaced it with concrete. Now, the first application of Milwaukee's orange and black freight livery didn't really adhere too well to the car body. In fact, after a while, it got really light, as you can see with this Prime for Grime example on our screen. And they were eventually repainted. They were repainted into what was then the current billboard livery until finally being retired and put in the deadline in 1984. So we're offering 3 different road numbers for the Milwaukee Road. First of all, we've got unit number 2. As you can see, it's faded, it's chipped, it's part of our Prime for Grime. Now, all 3 locomotives are going to share similar details, such as nose-mounted headlight, Leslie 3-chime horn. These are going to have non-dynamic brake housings, Milwaukee-style tall MU stands, electronic bell, winterization hatch, passenger pilot, and beacon signal lights per road number effect in DCC. What's that mean? Again, if you buy the Tsunami 2 equipped version, you're going to be able to take advantage of that. If you buy the DCC ready version, you still have the LEDs in there, but you're going to have to do the programming to get it to function, whereas with Tsunami 2, it's ready to go. Now, this particular locomotive has the faded colors to represent the hard service it saw. It also has a roof beacon, a cab signal light with emergency red warning light. Those are specific to unit number 2. Now watch the difference when we go to the next unit. Unit number 3, slightly different, not Prime for Grime, looking really good in its fresh coat of paint. This one has small side letters. Their beacon does not exist, and the cab signal light with emergency red warning light, however, is still there. And then finally, we got unit number 4. Slightly different paint scheme. The paint scheme actually is the same, but slightly different lettering. So this has the large side letters, the beacons, remove plate over the cab signal lights. So there again, every single one of these locomotives, even though they came from the Milwaukee Road, they're going to display slight differences. Now here's one, and I know some of you guys in the audience are just absolutely cringing right now, but hear me out. It's not personally my thing. It may not be your personal thing, but believe it or not, legendary liveries do sell, and they sell really well. In fact, when we had these open for pre-orders a couple of years ago, I dare say out of the FP45s, the Burlington route, as well as the Milwaukee road, were the strongest contenders. And so if you pre-ordered one of these, you're going to be happy to know that your dealer is going to be calling you soon or emailing you to let you know that these are in stock. If you really think this is cool and you didn't pre-order, you may have a hard time finding one of these. These tend to sell out quick. So let's go to an alternate timeline. Let's go back to 1967. Passenger service in the US was pretty dim. Most roads were losing money on trains and looking for any reason they could think of for abandoning service. Now, Burlington, however, and this is the OG Burlington, not Burlington Northern Santa Fe, or even BNSF, the OG Burlington was in a unique position. Not only did they constitute 1/3 of the conglomerate that hosted the world famous Cal Zephyr, they also operated a substantial commuter service in the Chicago area. To that end, the Q ordered 3 EMD FP45 locomotives in 1967, 2 to power the Cal Zephyr and 1 as a reserve. They reasoned that should the Cal Zephyr falter, these units could easily be adapted to commuter service. Makes sense on paper. Did it really happen? No, but if you're a fan like me of the original Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, you may try to figure out a way to justify to get one of these on your layout. Now, we're offering 2 different road numbers on this model, and here I've got pictured unit number 9999. We've also got road number 9997. Now, both of these units, besides having their fictitious paint, are going to have the split Leslie S3L horns, as well as the firecracker antenna, a winterization hatch, steam generator details, upper dual oscillating light with red and clear lights. Again, that comes standard with the Tsunami 2 version, and per CB&Q practice, no dynamic brakes. So there you got it. Pretty interesting locomotive. It could have happened. It didn't. But for those of us that want to celebrate the CB&Q of a locomotive that they never had, here's a plausible explanation. So what are the features of these models? Well, this is a brief overview. They're going to have a full cab interior, wire grab irons, coupler cut levers, see-through cab windows, flexible rubber MU hoses, lift rings, windshield wipers, walkway tread, flush-mounted porthole window glass, and get this, minimum radius on these recommended as our product developers have told us, recommended on these is 22. However, you can operate these on an 18-inch radius. Yes, I know this looks like a pretty good sized locomotive, but I can substantiate that because my layout behind me happens to have a curve that's an 18-inch radius, and I've run this locomotive behind me many times without any issues. And maybe we'll have a chance to show you that in a little bit. So there's the FP45s. Now let's talk about the F45s. Now the F45s, of course, we heard a little bit about those. But we're going to be offering some Santa Fe for these as well. Now, these were delivered in 1968. Santa Fe's fleet of 40 F45s were used mainly on the transcontinental line between Los Angeles and Chicago. If you've been a fan of the program for a while, you know that I like to rail fan when I'm in Illinois on the Transcon or the Transcontinental. Typically, my friend and I will start rail fanning in Streator or Toluca and work our way to Galesburg, which is just a very small portion of that very important line. Nowadays, when you're rail fanning that, you're going to see your typical GEVOs, Tier 4s, things of that nature. But go back to the 1970s and imagine these all braced together with TOFC trains. It would have really been cool. Now, if you do a search, I believe Emery Goulash got some really good 8mm film of some of these locomotives traveling the Transcon, and it's just really amazing to see these locomotives doing their thing back in the day. Now, in the mid-1970s, Santa Fe began to repaint the units and install a variety of rooftop equipment. Some of these things were air conditioners, antennas, and of course beacons. But in 1982 through 1983, the F-45s were rebuilt at the railroad's San Bernardino, California shops. They emerged wearing new numbers, which were in the 5900 series, as you can see here, and were classified as F45U or SD45. I'm sorry, SDF45. In 1994, 22 units were sold to Morrison and Knudsen and received MKM lettering under the road numbers. We're going to offer 3 of these road numbers for you in the Santa Fe blue and yellow. First one we've got here, 5918. So this locomotive is an unrebuilt unit with the earlier road number. So this is before the rebuild session that took place in the 82, 83 time period. This one's going to have the Leslie RS3L horn on a low clearance bracket. So you can see how low it is on the cab. Sinclair antenna is directly mounted on the dustbin. And the prime stratolite, if you look carefully, the beacon is mounted directly to the cab, right to the very top of the cab. Now let's check out the other two and see some differences. Now this one is 1980s. The other one was early, 1978 or so. This is mid 1980s. This one is part of the rebuilt number series. So technically it's an SD45, I'm sorry, F45U. This one has the Nathan K3LA horn on a tall bracket. You can see how it sticks up a little bit more than the previous unit. And the Sinclair antenna is mounted on a ground plane. This one too, the prime stratolite beacon, look carefully, you can see it's mounted on a bracket. Really cool. Very subtle differences, but again, this is where Genesis really shines. And then finally, 5973. Rebuilt series, you can see the MKM right underneath the road number, Leslie RS3L horn on the bracket, large and small Sinclair antennas mounted on the ground planes, and removed prime stratolite beacon platform. The stratolite is there, or gone, but look what was there. The mount is actually still there. That's kind of cool. And of course, MU hoses. Here's one, late 1980s. This is 5977. This is also part of the rebuild. So you've got 3 different road numbers to do 1980s. Leslie RS3L horn on the bracket, large and small Sinclair antennas mounted on ground planes, no beacon and no trace of a beacon. There's no mount, nothing. It's just all gone. And if you look carefully, look at the number boards. You have an alternate number board font that's different than the other ones. Of course, this one is also going to include MU holders. Now let's go into Wisconsin. So beginning operations back in 1980 with a small fleet of SD9s, the Wisconsin and Southern has grown over the years to 837 miles of track over 2 divisions in Wisconsin. In 1992, the Wisconsin and Southern acquired 3 former Burlington Northern F45s and repainted them into their attractive red and gray livery. Now, these were originally purchased to power trains from Horicon, Wisconsin to Chicago, Illinois. However, they were disliked for switching. Even doing it here on the little layout, I can see why crews probably didn't really like switching with these. They then moved to Janesville, Wisconsin for another Chicago train over Sioux line trackage, but they were never used as the Sioux prohibited 6-axle power at that time. Ultimately, these units didn't spend much time in southern Wisconsin as they proved too heavy for the old Milwaukee Road rails and the Wisconsin Southern operated on. Instead of sitting idle, they were released back to the Burlington Northern, and then they were sold to Montana Rail Link, where they were eventually repainted after a few years. So we've got a few of these here for you. We got 2 road numbers that we're going to show you. The one that you see on your screen now, 1001. And there's a lot of details they share. However, there's some subtle differences. First of all, these are former Burlington Northern units, so they're going to have some details that really will tell the hardcore prototype modeler that these are former Burlington Northern. There are going to include a winterization hatch, the Leslie RS3L horn, firecracker antennas, and prime stratolite beacon. This particular unit, 1001, has also got the cab-mounted oscillating headlight, which is really cool. Again, those come standard with the Tsunami 2 equipped versions. 1003 has all of that, except it has standard lights. It's not going to have the oscillating light that its stablemate has. Now we go to Great Northern, and as you can see, I've got one of these on the layout now. Now, in 1969, Great Northern placed an order for 14 of these F45 locomotives, and they were delivered in their blue and gray scheme, which by many rail fans have been called Big Sky Blue. Honestly, one of my favorite paint schemes, and almost became the paint scheme for the Burlington Northern, had the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, as well as some other railroads, the Northern Pacific included, said, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. We want our own paint scheme. So Big Sky Blue gave way to Cascade Green. But for a few short years, these locomotives would ride the system in this color, even as they became Burlington Northern. They would stay in the Big Sky Blue, with the only change being their road numbers. Eventually, however, they would get an all-new paint scheme, which would include the now familiar Cascade Green and Black. And we're offering 3 different road numbers here for Great Northern, including this guy right here, 428. Now, these are being delivered as they came on the grounds of the factory, or I'm sorry, of the railroad. So 1969. So these are all of the same. So if you're modeling Great Northern just before the Burlington Northern merger, these are going to be perfect for your layout. They're all going to have xenon beacon effect with the Tsunami 2, high-mounted headlights, winterization hatch, 3-chime horn, firecracker antenna, and of course a small EMD plow. Here's 428, followed by 434, and then finally 435. Now, even if you model early Burlington Northern, and maybe you've missed the versions that we've done in the past, you could still get one of these and re-decal the road numbers and patch it, which is exactly what the real railroad did. And like I said, even for Burlington Northern, they ran around in this paint scheme for a number of years before finally getting repainted. Going into the 2000s, we've got Montana Rail Link, and now hard to believe this is a fallen flag now. It seems just like yesterday that Montana Rail Link was a new and up-and-coming company, and now they're a fallen flag. Now, Montana Rail Link F45s 392 and 393, they were acquired from Wisconsin Southern in April of 1994, and they, of course, started life as Burlington Northern, being part of the only order they placed for F45s. When they arrived at Montana Rail Link, they were patched and ran as MRL 1002 and 1003 before being repainted. The W, or the Roaring Lion scheme, is the only paint scheme that both of these units wore, with MRL 393 being painted in March of 1997 so it could be leased to sister company, I&M Rail Link. Montana Rail Link 392 lasted a bit longer in its former paint scheme and was repainted in May of 2000. Both units are unique in their spotting features, as many of the Montana Rail Link units were, due to their previous heritages. These units are represented as they look between the painted dates listed above and 2006, when more reflectors were added and they were permanently sidelined. Montana Rail Link 392 was scrapped in the summer of 2014, while Montana Rail Link number 393 met the same fate much earlier in 2007. We're going to offer these 2 locomotives here for you, and you can add to your Montana Rail Link collection. The first one we have here, 392. This is a 2000 era nose-mounted headlight, winterization hatch, because again, former Burlington Northern. Road, horn placement per road number, firecracker antenna. Now, I know you guys are going to ask this because it's a 2000s era locomotive. Where are the ditch lights? Well, ditch lights are included. However, they're not installed from the factory. Those are included in a small poly bag in your Genesis box, and they can be added by yourself. These are also going to have a small front plow. And here's 393. Some of the same features: nose-mounted headlight, winterization hatch, being that it's a Burlington Northern former unit, Horn placement is specific for 393. Ditch lights, of course, are included along with the LEDs so that you can make those function. They just need to be installed by you, the modeler. And of course, a small front plow. Now we go on to Morrison Knudsen. Now, during the mid-1990s, Santa Fe sold off a batch of F45s to Morrison Knudsen with a simple painting over the former owner markings to get them back into lease service. Morrison Knudsen, of course, was no stranger to the locomotive rebuilding and leasing market. Santa Fe was able to lease them back on short-term lease agreements. They would also be seen on UP and SP trains when they were needed. So if you're modeling 1995 on up, but you don't necessarily model the Santa Fe, here's a perfect reason for adding this locomotive to your fleet. Now, this particular locomotive is going to feature the former Santa Fe paint scheme with removed markings, nose-mounted headlight, 3-chime horn on bracket, roof AC, passenger service style plow, Santa Fe style antenna setup, and walkway ditch lights. And just like the Montana Rail Link, they are included along with the LEDs. They just need to be installed by you, the modeler. So let's talk about some of the features here too. You're also going to have pretty much the same features as the FP45s. You're going to have the full cab interior, wire grab irons, coupler cut levers, see-through cab windows, flexible rubber MU hoses, lift rings, windshield wipers, walkway tread, and a host of other details. Now, if you're watching this video later, not during the live, if you look in the video description below, you'll see links for the PDFs on both of these models, and going to those PDFs will show you the original announcement as well as the full details of what these locomotives include from the factory. Again, we recommend a radius of 22. However, they will work on an 18-inch radius. So, when can you expect these locomotives? You can expect these locomotives real soon, probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So about the middle of October, you're going to start seeing these show up at your Athearn dealer. If you pre-ordered these, you'll probably be hearing from your dealer soon. If you didn't pre-order, you might want to get in touch with the dealer right now before they get here. Now, I've been saying it for a few months now. Pre-orders is what drives the orders, and we're only ordering exactly what gets pre-ordered. So some dealers, while they do pre-order above what their customers want, and there may be some stock left over, Athearn doesn't do that anymore. We're only ordering what we get for pre-orders. So there is a chance that if you didn't pre-order one of these locomotives, you may not get one of them. So just keep that in mind for future products that we announce. Go ahead and pre-order those. That way you're never disappointed. All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's see if we can answer a few questions. So I'm going to go back. Jeremy likes our selection. Thank you very much. People ask us, where do we get our selections? Well, I've said it before, a lot of us here at Athearn are model railroaders, but if we only chose what we modeled or what we like, we'd go out of business. Simply put, we get our information from a number of sources. We talk to you guys at shows. We listen to you during live feeds like this. Our number one resource is our product suggestion email. And by the way, if you haven't heard me say it lately, our product suggestion email is athearn-productsuggestions@athearn.com. Again, that's athearn-productsuggestions@athearn.com. And also, we put out surveys. You may remember this past spring, we put a survey out specifically talking about road names and models and what you'd like to see us produce. We use that information, and that helps us generate the road names that we come out with. Let's see what other questions we have. Scott and someone else is asking why we put the ditch lights separately in the F45s in this model. A couple of reasons. For this reason being, The tooling on these models is somewhat older. You'll notice that these don't have the lit classification lights. They don't have the lit number boards like a lot of Genesis units currently have. Now, in the future, they may. And if they do have that, there may be more provisions for the factory to assemble models with the ditch lights. There are some things that the factory can do in an almost, dare I say, mass produced technique and do it rather easily. However, this is one of the things that is not easily done. However, we do include those detail parts so that the average modeler can install them themselves. So what may be hard for a production run may be quite simple for you. A little bit of time with a drill bit and some working and some soldering, you're going to have ditch lights on these. And let's face it, we're all modelers. It should be pretty easy to do. Let's see what else we've got here. Richie is Mr. Announcements. Every time I see Richie, he wants to know, what's the announcement? Is there an announcement? Is there an announcement today? Do we have an announcement for the announcement for the announcement? No. We're going to have anything at Train Fest? I don't know. Product development doesn't always tell me stuff because I might leak it out on a Train Tuesday. As far as I know, I don't. But by the way, if you didn't know, Athearn is going to be at Train Fest, I'm happy to say. We're going to be there, and Mark Williams is also going to be there with me, and we're going to be there all weekend. So stop by the booth and see what we're up to. You never know what the guys at Athearn are working on. Let's see. I'm getting the same amount of questions I normally do about when are you going to build this, when are you going to build that. So let me tell you this much. PD is at maximum right now. We've got a lot of projects on the workbench that they're working on. Now I'm just going to go ahead and grab the elephant in the room because I know somebody out there has probably already asked it or is going to ask it. Where are the Surfliners? Where are the California cars? This is what I can tell you. Our lead product developer, John Stackpole, who's been interviewed on those cars before, is diligently working with the factory and working on continued refinements. Now, we've hit some challenges, but one of our jobs is to overcome those challenges. And rest assured, John is making sure that when those cars are done, they're going to be the best passenger cars you've ever seen. We don't want to show anything until we have a firm ETA, but rest assured we are working on those. And I'm hoping that soon John will get to a point where he will be able to share with us an ETA. I'm sure he's probably going to have some samples by the time we get to Amherst, but rest assured he's working on that as well as some other projects that are really pressing. And hopefully we'll see some news on that real soon. Brandon, you're one of the guys that says you guys always do a great job on the legendary liveries. They consistently look as close to real as a fantasy paint scheme could be. Yeah, it's something. Just because we do legendary liveries doesn't mean that we're just going to throw paint on any locomotive. Now, product development does a lot of studying, of course, because there's a lot of research involved with any of our railroads. But every once in a while, you come across some information where a railroad may have flirted with purchasing a certain locomotive. One that I can think of right off the top of my head is when Chicago Northwestern was originally going to order SD80 Max. Now, ultimately, that never happened, but maybe in an alternate timeline it did. And so we offered those in our legendary liveries. We try to make it as plausible as possible. So while some of you guys probably don't like legendary liveries, there are some folks like Brandon that really do enjoy them, and we thank you for your support. Let's see what else we've got. Stephen, no N scale announcements on this one. If you want to know what we're talking about, I try to make it as easy as possible. When these go live on Facebook and YouTube, the card's going to tell you what we're going to be talking about. And of course, the description is going to tell you what we're talking about. So no N scale this month. We had some N scale last week when we still had the pre-recorded sessions. In fact, that was talking about the tank trains in N scale. Anthony wants to know, are these F45s, the Susquehannas coming with these? No, just the ones that I showed you the presentation. That is from a later announcement. Those are going to be later on down the road. Let's see what else we got here. Here's a good question. Any news about the CP6644, the SD70 ACU that was painted up like a World War II era Spitfire? Yeah, I'm hoping we're going to have production samples maybe as soon as Trainfest. I can't promise that. Trainfest is only a few weeks away, if you think about it. So I'm hoping that I'm going to have some on display. Though we currently have an ETA of a delivery date of about early to mid-December, so we should see them this year. A lot of folks are excited about those. Jonathan wants to know, can we get Athearn to attend the 40th annual show in Concord next year? Well, John is actually the club president of the club that I attend. Most of you know I live in Concord area of New Hampshire when I'm not working in Illinois. And I think we could probably work something out, which reminds me, next week, we're going to have a special Train Tuesday where we're going to be talking about wood chip cars, and we're going to be in my home state of New Hampshire, and we'll probably see John next week on Train Tuesday. Let's see what else we've got. We're going to do one or two more questions, and I'm going to let you get back to it because, man, I can't believe it's October already. Union Pacific is just dying to let us know this information because he's probably posted it 4 times. But he says, Jim, I think the FP45 number 96 was a runaway Santa Fe locomotive in the 1994 at Cajun Pass. I can never say that word. You know what I mean? Pass. I'm a New Englander. I'm not from California. I don't know off the top of my head. It sounds familiar, but maybe somebody in the comments can substantiate that. It sounds familiar, but... Greg, here's a great question. Any special announcements to recognize the 250th anniversary next year? So while right now we are working on what we're going to be announcing next year, we've changed things up a little bit at Athearn. We are going to go to a bi-monthly announcement. So you've got 60 days, not just 30 days, because a lot of you guys are telling us that you were missing out on pre-orders. So we want to give you enough time to see those pre-orders. And second of all, yeah, we're going to be doing some really cool stuff for the 250th. By the way, if you didn't notice, the new announcements dropped on the Athearn website last week, and one of the items is a Boston and Maine number 200 GP38-2 that was repainted from its original blue paint scheme to a bicentennial paint scheme. And that was one that we were kind of using to kind of usher in that 250th. So if you're a fan of bicentennial or just red, white, and blue locomotives in general, like myself, next year is going to be a good year for you. Thank you, teacher. Now, if you could just pronounce Worcester. Let's see what else we got here. Charles says, love to see you in Concord. Oh, you know, I live just up the road, so I'm sure we can make that happen. All right, any more questions you've got? We've got a little bit of time. I'm going to, after I answer another question or two, we will probably see this guy in action. Now, I've got unit number 428, F45. That's from this release that's going to be going out to hobby shops in the next few weeks. I've got it on mute right now. If you're new to the program, you probably don't know this, but this layout behind me, this is what I spent my summer on. We had a kind of dismal summer here in the Midwest. It was really wet and it was really hot, so it wasn't really conducive to some of my other hobbies. So I figured, why not get ready for Train Tuesday by building a layout? Now, as time goes on, we'll explore a little bit more about this layout. It is a layout that is a proto-lance, and yes, there is a railroad that I am going to be modeling. I'll let that slowly sneak out in the coming weeks and months. Of course, it's not done. It's a rather unusual layout. It's a curved Inglenook spur layout. It's not even a full-size layout. It's just a spur. and it's going to serve one industry. So we're going to see this thing grow together, and hopefully this is going to help us all enjoy Train Tuesday a little bit more by running this. It's a little bit easier than what I was using this past summer, those modules. Let's see what else we've got. Cajon, that's right. I should have known that. Thank you. Terry loves correcting me. Cajon. I don't know why I couldn't think of that, but then again, I've been so busy with New England stuff. All right. Well, like I said, if there are locomotives you'd like to see us produce, or road names you'd like to see us produce, or even freight cars, don't forget our email. It goes directly to product development. It is Athearn-product suggestions, all one word, at athearn.com. Let's go ahead and run some trains. All right. Get this camera in position here. You're not going to really hear a lot of sound, mainly because I've got my lapel mic on. And I'm going to try to watch comments too as I run. But let's go ahead and let's get this fired up and running. Now, as you can see, we have the headlights. In this case, we got the cab mounted headlights. And I've got my Stratolight blinking there, which is function number 5. And I am going to put this going forward. That's just on step 2. I'm going to try to pan this around because you can see I have a rather tight 18-inch radius. Jeremy wants to know if I'm running this at half volume. No, I went into CV 128 and I turned it down to a value of 90. You can definitely do that half thing, but I prefer to program it. So you can see that's an 18-inch radius. It's got 0 issues going around it. Let's see if we can switch out some cars quick. There's speed step 3. We're going around again. Now again, this is a layout in progress, so don't expect a George Celios looking layout. Pick these 2 guys up. We got 2 boxcars here from a release, probably about a year or so ago. Again, you're probably not going to hear this because I do turn it down. This is a rather small room. Put our bell on. We're going to go forward. Let him get going. Again, that's an 18-inch radius curve. Zero issues. Now, in real life, this thing would have oilers just working. You'd hear a lot of screaming from the wheels because this is such a tight radius. Jason, you were right. You would not be able to run this on a 15-inch radius. No way. But most of the Athearn Genesis and the Athearn locomotives are engineered to run on an 18-inch radius curve, which is really kind of cool. Now that the first car that you see there, that is an original blue box I bought back in 1995. We're going to move those cars all the way down there because in this world, this isn't really a main line. This is just a spur. So, like I said, you can get the locomotive with or without the Tsunami 2. I know there are some folks that like other brands of decoders. Not a problem. You can get the DCC ready version. I apologize if that tripod appears a little bumpy. We do have some new equipment that's coming in the next coming days. So unfortunately with my layout, I won't be having a lot of 60-foot or larger freight cars. This is speed step 3, just for your information. Would I normally use an F45 for switching operations? No. Cowl units, as the Wisconsin and Southern found, aren't really ideal for switching. We're going to go ahead and drop these guys off. It's always harder to do certain tasks on camera. So Late Night wants to know what locomotives will I primarily be using on this layout. Well, mainly 4-axle EMDs, GP15s, GP39-2s, GP38-2s. That's going to be the main power. I'm actually doing something very far removed from my N-scale layout and not modeling a New England road, and I'm not modeling New England. I'm actually going to model Illinois for once. But for the purposes of Train Tuesday, we're always going to run the Star locomotive. Aha. Mr. LaFrance, I get to finally correct you. No, I've actually run 50-foot cars behind the motive power with zero issues. One of the things I did is, even though I have an 18-inch radius curve, before that turnout, I've got 4 inches of straight track. So no, I don't need to have a 40-footer. We'll let the crew sit tight for a little bit. Let's see if there's any other questions. Terry once says Wisconsin and Southern crews aren't all that excited about switching with their SD60Ms either. Yeah, I don't know if I would like to switch with one of those either. That doesn't sound good. So yeah, kind of to answer your question, Derek. Yeah, if I had put the curve straight way after the turnout, yeah, it would have caused all kinds of problems. So if you ever come into a situation where you need to have a turnout and a curve, make sure you've got at least minimum 4 inches of straight track before you go into that curve. Otherwise, it will be a nightmare. Now, I haven't experimented with it yet, but I'm sure if I had like a auto part boxcar, it might cause some problems. Tim, thank you very much. This layout is just in the very beginnings. I literally put this together starting the last weekend of July, and I've been working on it ever since. And we'll get to see it change and grow up together. Thank you for the kind words on the grass. I appreciate it. It's not done yet. This is cool. Terry says he saw BNSF using an FP45 super fleet on a work train down in Texas. Yeah, I know somewhere too. I've got pictures of one of those locomotives in Galesburg. Now those buildings are not going to be used in the future. That's just up there for tonight. That is all going to be replaced with a new business. Phlox wants to know, when is Athearn planning on releasing the cart knocker line? We had a good success with those. That was going to be, we announced those back this past spring. We should be seeing those in early to mid 2027, if I remember right. That's just a guess. I haven't heard a firm ETA from product development or the factory. Yeah, so do I. I wish my lawn looked that good. Jeremy wants to know, what size turnouts am I using? I am using Microengineering Code 70 number 5, or I'm sorry, number 6 turnouts. I've had really good success with Microengineering, and I really like their turnouts. Well, here's your chance to ask any last minute questions. Otherwise, we're going to let this train get back to the yard. We're going to say Galesburg. Maybe that'll give you an idea of what I'm going to be modeling. Any other last questions? Sid wants to know, any firm ETA on the NSC 6400 yet? I wish I did. I don't, unfortunately. That is one of the projects that John is working really hard on. John has assured me that when he's got a moment that he can let me know when they're going to go, we will. Terry wants to say, can you take it all around the curve? Yeah, let's do it right now. We'll pan this. Yeah, and I've got it on speed step 1 so you can see. I'll be glad when my new tripod comes in so it's not so shaky. So this is towards the end, and you can see the straight section. I'm going to get out of the light so you guys can see it. Mr. Nemechek, no update on the snow bus. The N scale and the HO ones, they are being worked on. I've seen some samples. I don't know if we're going to get to see some of those samples at a show, but I think John is trying to have those out by sometime next year. I'm not going to go any further because you're going to see my hammerhead. Actually, I'll just move the hammerhead for you. So there you go, for those that were asking. All the way around the curve, 18-inch. Another good question, what's the scoop? Good use of words on the food caboose. I've seen some samples. And I don't know. I'm hoping maybe in the spring we should see something. What speed step do you reckon it'll do around the 18 inches? Well, I know with a GP39-2, it goes way too fast, and I haven't had any derailments. I gave it the torture test. So I wanted to test it. I wanted to make sure it would be okay, because you know how it's like when you're having an operating session. That's when everything goes wrong. So I put it through a torture test. Late Night wants to know, how far are you going to send this layout? You knocking any walls out? No. So I tell people I live in New Hampshire, but I work in Illinois. I rent here. So this layout is semi-permanent. The layout itself is made up of two 4-foot modules with a connecting corner. I really recycled a portable layout that I used to take to shows with me. Good question. Are the American flags on the Superfleet FP45s printed on from the factory, or are they decals to allow the modelers to choose their era? No, they come exactly like you see printed from the factory. So if we show it with the American flags, it's going to have the American flags. Any plans on making another run of those N-scale articulated auto rack cars anytime soon or later on? Probably later on. Nothing right away. All right, I'm going to move this here, move this out a little bit. That way, hopefully we can see the whole scope of our curve. No kits like that. We've talked about it, but we haven't really. There's so many different manufacturers out there, especially nowadays, that well, closest we're going to get to that are those concession cabooses. Jim, the MK F45 would be great for anyone's railroad of lies, but you have sunk my wallet with Rock Island 4310. I understand the railroad of lies. Well, with that, I'm going to let you guys go. We're going to let this guy go back to Galesburg. I want everybody out there to be happy, be healthy, be safe, do some good modeling. If you're going to Train Fest in a few weeks, look me up. Also, I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to be in Indianapolis. I'm going to be in Concord, New Hampshire. I'm going to be all over the place in October. So if you're in any of those places, look me up. I love talking trains. And until next time, take care, everyone. High greens.